Welcome to the Rock and Roll Ghost Podcast. This week we have Michael Muser. He is the Director of Operations and co-owner of Michelin-starred Chicago restaurant Ever. Michael, it's a pleasure to finally. I can't remember if we've actually talked before, but because it's been a long. I've been writing about food for a long time, but if not, good to finally meet you and talk to you.
Yeah, great to meet you as well. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I know. I remember when Grace got their 2 stars. I was at the celebration that night, but that was a long time ago, so I can't even remember what what that night entailed
Right.
exactly.
Usually those nights end up like that.
Yeah, so
You don't
uh,
remember all of it usually.
yeah, so Ever's still. I mean, it's going probably as strong as ever, I would imagine. How are you feeling about the restaurant? Not you're a few years into it.
We feel like we're where we should be. I think it's tricky because I think we're like 4.5 years old, but the first 2 solid years of that were dragging out of COVID,
Hmm.
and I get the feeling because I don't necessarily hear the same level of woes from my friends in, let's say, New York or Los Angeles in terms of the desperate need for hands,
Hmm.
for people, for staff. I feel as if in the Midwest or maybe in Chicago, we just got hit really hard with it.
Hmm.
And I feel, I'm not. Notice I'm saying feel. These are
Right.
all emotions, right? But
Right, right.
but they're kind of
It's
like
not like you
based.
have data backing that up at the
Yeah,
moment.
it's not like I know. I don't know what I'm talking about, right? But but
Hey,
but
hey, that sounds like me.
I don't claim to, but it's like my everyday experiences and the experiences of my friends that are in the same kind of businesses that I'm in. Our conversations. It just feels like it's taken us quite some time to pull out. So, the long answer there is that, yeah, we're 4.5 years old, and I feel like we're like a fight. We're a fighting 2 Michelin-starred restaurant that would really like to earn its third Michelin star,
Hmm.
but is in no hurry to do so. It is really happy to be in this kind of like fighting stance. Flexible is the menu right now. Course is
Hmm.
changing all the time. Uh, really just kind of honing in on our craft. And we're lucky to be a pretty busy restaurant. Ever was built to do around 50 people a night, 60 people a night. That's
Hmm.
kind of what it looks like, full steam ahead, and it's been lucky as of late to do those numbers, even on like Tuesdays and Wednesdays, which traditionally would be your slower nights of the week for a restaurant
Hmm.
like ours. So we're taking that as an opportunity to like have to be that restaurant that lives and breathes, right? If the covers are coming in consistently, then
Hmm.
that means as a soccer team, we have an excellent opportunity to have scrimmage matches every single night and really hone in on the details of our service pattern, where those sexy little nuances live in a service pattern that can make it really pleasant for the client.
Yeah. Well, you brought it up, and it was a question I was going to ask. What exactly do you think it would take for you guys to get 3 stars? Grace started out with two and had three for the rest of its existence. What do you think it's a thing on Michelin, or is it something you guys need to do internally? Or like I said, I mean, you said it just now, you're not, you're fighting, you're not necessarily exactly worried about it, but it's got to be somewhere in the back of your minds.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, you definitely, it's such a truism to say that you can't do what we're doing for an accolade. It just like, you would just burn out. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? It would just because it's a mirage. Like it may never come,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
you can't. You've got to really at your core do it because you really do love doing what you do. Period. End of
Hmm.
story. But for sure, it's there. It's something that it's fun to have a carrot at
Hmm.
the end. At the end of the stick right now, something to chase because we have been on both sides of the fence.
Yeah.
Where once you achieve it, it's like it does feel you feel a very serious onus to like your city. You know, it's like you guys hold a Stanley Cup,
Hmm.
and you do not want to screw that up
Yeah.
under any circumstances. You don't want to fail your town by being the one that lost a star for some silly reason. And
Right.
so it is a different game. It does feel weird to wear the third
Yeah.
than it does to fight for it. And
Yeah.
for sure, I would argue that the more fun is had on the fighting for it side
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
terms of like, you know, because you get moody and you're like, and you make cool decisions and risky decisions and pushy decisions that maybe you probably wouldn't in other circumstances, you know? So
Yeah.
I think that the restaurant right now is settled right where it is. We have a good team right now that is based on people that have been around now for a couple of years. You know, I reference this a lot, but I had a really cool conversation with Chef Brian Enyart, and
Hmm.
he's just a really brilliant guy. And he goes, man, you know what COVID really did was it wiped out our sophomore and our junior classmen.
Yeah.
And man, that struck me as so true because it did. It kind of felt like all we had left was like bitter seniors and freshmen who are just acting as freshmen do. They don't know, you
Yeah.
know. And the seniors are looking at the freshmen going, "Hurry up and become sophomores and juniors, would you?"
Yeah.
You know that they're so important. The middle,
Yeah.
those they're so important to the. Oh my God, to the quality of everything. Server assistants, back waiters, sommeliers, for God's sakes. You know, like active working somms who want to be on a restaurant floor, you know, floating around, assisting people with wine decisions, walking them through the wine list, or at best, walking them through a whole pairing set that's paired next to, you know, a menu so that the two mean something and talk to each other all night long.
Yeah.
These people are everything to us, and we now, for the first time in a while, have a set of them that have been with us for some time and are getting really good at their craft.
Yeah.
And what that allows you to do is not have to obsess over all the little shit, you know, all the little things.
Yeah.
You don't have to wonder or worry that when that guest gets up to use the restroom, if 11 people aren't going to trip over themselves to get to the client to escort them or show them the way to the restroom, right? Because
Right.
especially our restaurant's like a big weird circular cave. No one knows where they're going, right? But you know, when you have to worry about that, when you have to worry about the protocol of what happens in a room like ours when a guest gets up to use the restroom, there's a whole series of things that happen
Hmm.
after they get up. The begins with an immediate replacement of their napkin, and then it's immediately followed by communication to the kitchen via the expediter that that guest is up, and whatever's happening on that table stops now until that guest returns. And then when the guest returns, you'd for sure want to count and know that your team never misses a chair pull. And there's always someone there to,
Yeah.
you know, accept the guest and pull the chair and tuck the chair in for them. You
Gotcha.
know, so when you have a team of people that do these things by reflex, you're you're getting there, you know,
Yeah.
you're getting
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned an interesting thing. I mean, a lot of people with the pandemic that were working hospitality decided to get out. Do you have an understanding that maybe people are coming back?
Yeah, and or the people that have shown up have stayed. You know, there are some people that I think hadn't had restaurant experience before, but came into it because restaurants were in a place where they were, you know, accepting just about anybody that was willing to, you know, take on the work.
Yeah.
Um, and then I think that we might be seeing a fair amount of a new generation or a new set of people that have discovered what many of us believe to be true, which is that a restaurant and the restaurant industry is a wonderful place to live your life, and there are a lot of benefits to it. One of them is not free time.
Yeah, no,
The hours no one can take away. I think it's
yeah,
the one real thing always said about restaurant life is that the commitment to the amount of time that you're going to spend there
yeah,
is extreme to other
yeah,
people that work 8-hour shifts.
yeah,
You know, if you work an 8-hour day and you know you're a normal person, but restaurant people work an 8-hour day and then they clock into service and then they
yeah,
work service until like 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, and then they go home.
yeah,
And they're doing that 5, sometimes 6 days a week.
yeah,
So I would never take that part away. But outside of that, they're incredible. The restaurant industry is an incredible place for you to live, and you can live a great life inside it.
yeah,
It's so huge, a restaurant. You can do anything inside of it: graphic design, website stuff, social media, all like all the different aspects of your creative life can be lived inside of a restaurant. If you
yeah,
like marketing, if you like numbers, if you like the economic side of it, if you like the business side of it, there's all sorts of fun little nerdy pockets to bury yourself. You don't have to just wait tables or cook,
yeah,
you know. Um, and so I hope that those people that came into the restaurant industry, a fair number of them are staying, and it's
mhm,
stabilizing us, and will continue to stabilize us more
yeah,
as time goes on. We can only hope, because man, I'll tell you, in the beginning, it was crazy how flighty everybody was.
yeah,
There was just this aura, this air of, hey, if I'm going to work there, what is that workplace going to do for me?
right,
Let's talk about my needs
yeah,
first and foremost. And man, the hospitality business, I think one of the best parts about it is it's a humble place. You have to be humble to live inside of it, and it's a place of servitude. And when you get good at it, you realize that that's kind of where the juice is. That's the candy. Is that it
yeah,
feels good to serve other people. It feels good to be in the service of other people. It feels good to humble yourself and serve and literally be there for someone else's needs. To make a deal with them and say, I'm going to charge you an insane amount of money,
yeah,
and you have trusted us that we're not going to let you down,
mhm,
and that we fully understand that we have set the stakes incredibly high because we've had the audacity to charge you that much money for a dinner. But we'll all know right at the beginning it's not just a dinner,
yeah,
and that this is going to be an experience for you, and it's
right.
game on for us to make sure that we're there for you every step of the way.
Well, your statement or your response to that, it made me think of a few things, but uh the first thing is obviously Ever is at a different level than other restaurants. Is it a matter of just, you know, somebody forgetting what they know somewhere else and getting into the program at Ever, or is it just a general, people know what they're getting into when they're going in to begin with?
In terms of like becoming
Oh,
a staff member.
in terms of being at, being somebody that could be at that level, in I'm sorry if it's a little confused. But basically you're getting people that know what the deal is, as opposed to if they go to some random place that just slings burgers and beers.
Somewhat, yes. We have a long and storied history of taking people that either have restaurant level experience that you would say is, not fine dining, like regular restaurants, like
Hmm.
one of our captains, Dan Molina is his name, and before he worked at our restaurant with us, he worked at Harry Carey's,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And but even outside of that, people with zero restaurant experience here, like the thing is, it's all the golden stuff You have to be able to commit to things that sound so simple off the get-go, but you could not imagine how many people you will cut out of the room by starting the conversation by simply saying this. Here, we are never late.
Yeah.
Never late for work. Can you promise me you will never be late for work? Because everything we do here is set on clocks.
Yeah.
So, and it starts with the fact that you're going to be doing the thing that I need you to do in uniform, totally set, no excuses, no traffic stories, no life drama. Can you promise me you're going to be here on time? Because I can promise you that if you're not here on time, it will be a problem for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's not agree to work together if you can't promise me that. Can you promise me that? 7 out of 10 people left the room.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It's a table waiting job. Why is this guy so intense? You know, it's a restaurant gig. What's the big deal about being on time? You know? And that's just the first thing.
Yeah.
Is just guarantee me you're going to be on time, because late around here don't fly.
Right.
You got to be on time. And then, you know, and then it's uniforms, and then then it's side work, and then it's outside study, and making sure that when wines get changed on the pairing that everybody's up on the pairing, you know, and menu changes and service pattern stuff, and just, you know, the ability to get in here and shut all the other stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
Because ours is a service pattern that if you find yourself, even for a split second, thinking about Game of Thrones or whatever, House of Dragons, you know, if you pull out of it for a second, you can screw stuff up like bad.
Yeah.
You could pick up a table, you could pick up a plate that's got an allergy or a dietary restriction connected to it, and put the wrong plate in front of the wrong person in the dining room. You could actually hurt somebody.
Right.
You know, that's, we're worried about that all the time.
Yeah.
So the level of commitment of people that come in, and do they know what they're getting into? My answer to you is, if they can commit to us on all the basic rudimentary, this is what we're going to agree to work together, that you're going to agree to all of these standards, and that the house is going to agree to a bunch of stuff to you. We're going to make sure you get all the things that you need to succeed. We're going to make sure you get all the training that you need. We understand that you're coming in at 0. That's
Yeah.
not an issue. We're going to start you at 0. We're going to figure this out. We're going to train you. It's okay. You know, at its base core, you're going to start on that food running line. And the complicated part is table numbers and position points. But outside of that, it is picking up a plate in the kitchen and putting it down in the dining room. Right?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's oversimplifying it, though, right? A
No,
good food
I
runner would tear that apart and be like,
Yeah.
"Oh, excuse me." You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, no. Well, you know, here's a thing too. Like I feel like, okay, so my background is in 1992. I had a friend whose brother worked at a bakery, and that summer he and I cleaned the bakery. And then a position opened up in another location. This was like just a 2 location bakery, and they the boss, the owner, funneled down word to get to me about signing on. And at the time, you know, I'd gone through some personal stuff, like a personal tragedy, and I was just kind of floating around. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I was working at a movie theater. So I was like, okay, I'll try this out. And as much as I regret spending 9 years working at a baker, or 7 years, whatever it was, at a bakery, it made me understand more what you guys do than anything. Even though it wasn't the lifestyle I should have ever gotten in, you know, I did it. I showed up for work. I did, you know, 12-hour days. You know, probably the reason why I have no cartilage in my knees right now. Uh, you know, lifting heavy bags.
Sure.
Making gels that spit back at me and left, marks on my arms, all that shit.
Yeah.
Not to mention the abuse of the guy I worked for. Um, it's an insane proposition sometimes to be in this field. Um, but you have to be of a certain mentality and strength, inner strength to I think do it. But I think a lot of that's kind of, maybe it's a generational thing. Like I was still part of, I think we're in the same generation, where you understood that you had to work. Like there wasn't any way to not work, you know. And nowadays I feel like there's a thing like people can take or leave working.
Right.
And I don't know. Obviously, nobody like that gets too far at ever, I would ever imagine.
Right. It is very you bring up a really bizarre kind of like generational riff that took place, and no one, I think, realized that it took place, which was at some point ours is a generation of parents saying regularly, go get a job. They
Yeah.
would say that all the time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Get out of here, go get a job
Yeah.
at the supermarket, at the movie theater, at the pet store, at the tuxedo rental place. I had them all, man. It was like,
I started working when I was 14. I was doing lawn maintenance, like for like a teenager thing where they, got people teenagers together to go cut like old people's lawns and stuff. And then I worked at a shoe store, movie theaters, all that from like 14 on. So because I lived in a household with just my mother as the breadwinner, and she was struggling enough working 3 jobs and going to school.
yeah.
You
And
know,
all my friends had jobs too. Like everybody was working somewhere. Like everybody had a movie theater job or something like that when they were in high school, and certainly throughout college. And it is so crazy to me that, yes, I think that it's part of what I was saying when I said in the beginning, employment was insanity. You would take anybody basically that walked in the door, and if the ones that did walk in the door stayed for more than 5 days, it
yeah,
was just insane, right? Because
right,
people had taken on, I don't know, it was a ripple effect from the pandemic or whatever, but they just had this mindset of like, hey man, I'm just not gonna invest the time that I have
mm,
into a restaurant. It's just, it takes too much time, it's too much effort, it's too painstaking. And what's to say on the other side of that those aren't totally true. No, there are a lot of the hours and the work, and no one's going to say it's easy. I don't think.
right,
I think you'd be lying if you did. But is it worth it? Is subjective.
yeah,
It depends on what you get out of it. Uh, Everybody that works at our restaurant gets a lot out of service.
yeah,
Like that's what we do all the bullshit for. Is to be able to have service.
right,
Service is the best. Welcoming people into your restaurant every night never doesn't get exciting. It's always exciting.
yeah,
4:30, because we do doors at 5 o'clock. So 4:30 to 5 o'clock is like final tweaks. There's like 11 vacuums going off in the dining room. There's like everybody's vacuuming everywhere. Somms are setting out their wines and decanters. It's awesome, you know. It's the 11 hours of shit we got to do to get to that point. That's like, oh, you know, that's the WORK.
yeah,
Services work too, but it's also very rewarding.
yeah. Well, what I get, and it's mostly from talking to Curtis in the past, and Richie Farina, who used to be with you guys, I talked to him while he was still at Ever, and just general reading, and just knowing about what it takes to be at a restaurant at this high of a level. um you know you have to know going in that you're strong enough, both mentally, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally strong enough to stick with it, because otherwise you shouldn't be making the commitment to a place like this. I mean, you shouldn't, other jobs, yeah, you could have a bad day, and it's not gonna throw the whole thing off. But if if somebody has a bad day, it's probably gonna be repercussions throughout.
For sure. Usually it's if somebody screws up, the challenge isn't you can see it hurts so bad for them. They're in
Yeah,
so much, they're so pissed at themselves. What we usually end up having to do is tell them, all right, all right, all right, now breathe and
yeah,
let it go. Because we still have 4 more hours of service. So that happened, and no one's happy about it. I
right.
agree. We're good, but we're all going to get over it now, and we're going to have the rest of service. Cool. Okay. It's because it's just kind of that's what I mean by I think we're coming where we are where we're supposed to be. I think we're coming into a nicer place. I say these things slowly now because I've said them before, and then it gets wonky again.
Yeah, yeah,
But I do feel like slowly we're morphing into a place where the people that we have, like I said, they've got enough time vested in that a lot of the things that we're having to work on are now reflexes to them,
hmm,
and we're getting to start to focus on other stuff that kind of heightens our experience.
yeah. Um, well, you guys started after in 2022. What was, I mean, you had Rev for a while, the burger thing.
Yeah.
What was, I guess, what was the thought behind closing Rev and working towards doing something with After? What
Yeah.
was the original idea?
Well, we had a couple of spaces that were next door to the restaurant, and we felt like even though we're in a very secluded part of the hottest part of the city, the West Loop of Chicago is
Yeah,
like a booming metropolis of high rises going up and apartments going up. And when we decided to put Ever where we put it in the West Loop, and you would immediately go, "Oh, okay, so the most posh section of all of downtown Chicago." Yeah, kind of, but on the very west end of it, like the very furthest corner of it.
yeah,
So we're blocks and blocks away from development.
right.
Ever Restaurant is, but that didn't bother me because Ever is a destination thing.
Hmm,
And what's a few blocks in your Uber? It's not, if you want to come and see what Curtis is doing and eat his food, the few blocks won't matter. And so forever, it made perfect sense. And we went ahead and plopped it. Then there were some empty spaces next door to it that we had had our eye on from the beginning.
hmm,
And it was mostly decided that there would be a cocktail and eatery next to Ever Restaurant that would essentially be a toned down version of Curtis's food. Like I love what Curtis does in terms of his tasting menu format. Things are art pieces. They're
hmm,
so cerebral and they're so elegant, um, and they're epic. And they're so pretty sometimes you don't even want to mess them up and eat them. You feel bad almost
yeah,
like smashing them up, right?
yeah,
So I get that. And that's true. And it is what he does. But if you've ever had like a simple roasted chicken by Curtis Duffy, it's
hmm,
like, or just like a bowl of truffle risotto,
hmm,
or just stuff that he cooks that he likes to cook. That's what you get at After.
hmm,
You can sit down, have a cocktail, or have a beer. You can get the burger there if you want to get the burger. It's available there. We even offer it as a happy hour item. And then there are like larger, more elegant plates and smaller, like, there's a little bit for everybody. Small plates, large plates, and a burger. It's a bar, right?
yeah,
So it's meant to do that. But we've been toying around with a lot of stuff to do in the bar. We might do some fun pop ups in the bar with some friend guest chefs, or we have some really pretty like dining tables in the bar as well. So we
okay.
might use those for like tasting menu pop ups, like a miniature Ever experience over in the cocktail lounge. Um, yeah. So I don't know. That's why it's, and then next door to that, we have an event space, which is
Yeah.
like a very large empty ballroom that we reconstruct into doing anything from 10 tops to 20 tops to, we even did like 110 in there a few weeks ago. So, and there is, like a banquet menu style, but we do custom 3-course, 5-course experiences in there as well.
Okay.
So,
Yeah,
look, we're big.
that's the
Yeah, go ahead.
canvas, right?
Say again.
That's the canvas.
That's the canvas.
Yeah.
Yeah, our banquet space. Yeah. We use that for a bunch of stuff. I do wine classes in the canvas. So it houses, a bunch of different activities.
Okay. All right. And I mean, so you got basically three spaces now. I mean, are there any thoughts to doing something else?
Yeah, I mean, we have friends that are developing stuff all around us, buildings that are going up as I speak, and buildings that have just started breaking ground. And each one of those buildings is going to have a whole plethora of needs inside of them. And
Yeah.
so we're looking right now and kind of trying to figure out what the best decision is, what we feel passionate about, what we're excited about, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But we definitely have our hands full right now,
Yeah.
just dealing with Ever After and Canvas has been a lot, and the participation in the Bear series
Yeah.
has brought a lot of work along with it too, just kind of managing it and that kind of stuff.
Well, might as well segue into that. Obviously, you guys have been a prime focus. We're a prime focus for season 2 and 3 of the Bear. How did the reach out begin to even get you guys involved?
I think someone from their team reached out to me and asked if they could see the space, and I said sure. And I think it was I think the gentleman that reached out was like one of their like lead producer guys,
Mhm.
and for sure a team of like 25 of them showed up. I mean, it was I was like, oh wow, okay.
You were expecting a few.
Yeah, I thought they'd have a couple of them, but they all showed up. And because what I did not know at the time they were walking through the space was that they had their script for season 2, episode 7,
Right.
I believe it is. They had their Forks script, and they were, for sure, knowing that storyline now and knowing how the episode worked out. Yeah, Ever is a perfect backdrop for their fictional tale, of what it is.
Mhm.
And yeah, the two are very, very, very much alike. The Ever that you experience in episode 7 is a lot like the real Ever,
Yeah.
for sure. Front of house staff go through all of the basics of setting up what we do, and detail focus is everything, to polishing forks, to the way you fold napkins, and the fact that the napkin has a trifold in it, and each one of those trifolds needs to be a 1/4 inch away and separate from the next, and that those get measured by a manager with a ruler and checked before they go into the dining room to be sent out.
Yeah.
You either like this stuff or you don't like that stuff, right? And they did a great job, and Evan, the guy that played Richie, did a great job of being like a normal, kind of like just what you and I were just talking about, right?
Yeah.
Like, is it for everyone? And that's a good segue into, yeah, here's a guy who this was not his thing,
Right.
and he was a bit abrasive towards it and confused by it, and probably didn't see the point in a
Mhm.
lot of it. But in the end, after he jumped in, he kind of saw the beauty of what it is,
Yeah.
and honestly the specialness of what it is,
Yeah.
and that a restaurant has the power to do really cool stuff if it
Yeah.
just listens, if it's listening to its tables, if it's listening to the clients in the dining room,
Yeah.
I used to use this really shitty analogy of it's like one of the Superman movies, and Superman shoots up into the atmosphere, and he kind of holds his arms out like Christ, and he spins around in circles, and he's hearing, right? He's listening, because
Yeah.
only Superman can hear. And what is he hearing? He's hearing all the woes of society. He's hearing, ladies get their purses stolen in Manhattan. He's hearing, all the bad things that he wants to go and correct. And I used to tell the team, like, have a Superman moment. Stand in the middle of the dining room and shut up. Just spin around in circles and just listen. Just listen in all directions. And you will hear the needs and the wants and the desires of your clients in the dining room. You will
Yeah.
hear someone say, wow, this is the most amazing pretzel bread I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
And you have the power and the ability to walk back to pastry and tell the expediter, pack some pretzel bread for table 32 upon departure. And if that pretzel, if they valeted with us, then that warm bag of pretzel bread will be in their car, sitting on the passenger seat or the center console, right? So when they get in their car, they look down, they go, "Oh my God!" Right? And they've had this really cute moment, this moment that was really thoughtful, and it took effort, but it doesn't cost money. It almost never costs that much money.
Yeah.
The pretzel bread probably costs the restaurant $4 or $5. So what? You
Yeah.
know, for the moment, it's like so awesome. You can't, let it cost as much money as it needs to for the reaction you get out of it, for
Yeah.
the, for the home run that it delivers. I thought that the television show did a pretty darn good job of
Yeah.
kind of portraying a lot of that. That the ethos of all of that is very much this restaurant and what we do here, without
Yeah.
a doubt.
Well, I will say one of the things is, as somebody that's been writing about the Chicago food world for a while and has lived in Chicago his whole life, I mean, the Bear to me is almost like a religious experience. It number one, Christopher Storer is in my damn head because I wrote a screenplay and I put together a Spotify playlist, and there's at least like 3 to 5 songs that's been used on the Bear that I had on that playlist that I wanted it. Like, if I had the dream, it got made, I would put those songs on there, and there were songs that I didn't think anybody knew about. So, like, but he gets everything right about Chicago. He makes Chicago look better than anything else. I mean, not him alone, obviously the team. But in general, he's the captain of the ship. So most of the credit's going to end up going to him. But the thing that you brought up, the Forks episode, is one of the things I love about the show is that so many of the people, so many of the characters on the show have discovered their love for something that they've been doing for a long time in a different way now.
Yes.
It really brings out people's best in some of the characters. Obviously, in the case of Carmi, he's in season 3, he's just getting worse somehow, especially with his completely insane daily menu change for that kind of a small place like that with a small crew can't handle the R&D of that insanity.
Exactly.
You're gonna burn out. And
Right.
I understand. I think that's what they were getting at too. But when I first heard the non-negotiables, I was like, that ain't never gonna fucking work. It's like, you might as well just shoot yourself in the head right now because that
Right.
is not gonna work.
Right.
But it is such an amazing show, and for you guys to get that kind of spotlight, I mean, it's got to be just incredible because now regular people know about Ever, not just
Yes.
food.
Yes. Yes. It does. You're outside of its universe.
Yeah,
Does that make sense? Like, it's
yeah,
not, it's this big orb of a world, this Bear thing,
yeah,
and the show, and all all the energy that surrounds it.
yeah,
And it's cool, for sure, cool that Ever is a part of that universe,
yeah,
and that you know what I mean, that it
yeah.
connects. Like, I'll give you one. I just took a motorcycle ride from Chicago to Seattle, essentially, and
Mhm.
then down the Washington coast into Oregon. And I passed the town of Forks, which I was reminded quite quickly was the town that the vampire teen movies are filmed in.
Oh, Twilight.
Twilight.
I was like, what are you talking about? And I
And
was like, oh, Twilight.
here in this small town, I think Forks is in Washington. Actually, I don't even think it's even in Oregon. It's in Washington. There's hundreds of teenage girls in this town
Yeah.
walking around, right? The whole purpose for my motorcycle ride, because I needed a destination,
Yeah.
was the Goonies house in Astoria, Oregon.
Okay.
And so I rode my motorcycle from Chicago to Oregon just so I could pull up on the Goonies house and just stand in front of it for
Yeah.
like 5 minutes. It's a special movie for me as a kid. And I knew that it was there, and that somebody new had bought the house and let people stand in front of it without shooting them or calling the cops. Because there was a lady that owned it prior to, and she was not okay with
Yeah.
walking up to her house. My point is that the town of Forks and the old lady that bought that Goonies house, they had no idea of the universe
Right.
for which those entities live.
Yeah.
That unbeknownst to her, Goonies has a big orb around it, and it swallowed that house.
Right.
And whether she wanted it to or not, that house was a Goonies house.
Yeah.
And Goonies were going to be walking up to it every day for the rest of their lives and wanting a picture in front of it. And does the analogy make sense?
No, I get it. Yeah, yeah.
Ever is like the Goonies house, man. It lives inside this big orb universe that is the bear now.
Yeah.
And it's out of my control.
Yeah.
I don't have control over it. Nor does Curtis, right?
Yeah.
So in typical Curtis Duffy fashion, he's just laser beams.
Yeah.
Always. Like that never changes. That's like a hidden gift of his.
Yeah.
To be able to cut, and I mean everything out, and food, just food. Because like you said, the changing of the menu can get I mean, it takes like 6 weeks for something to go from concept to an actual plateable item that you're going to send 50 to 60 to the dining room tonight.
Right.
And we've got 14 of these things lined up. So to switch one of them out takes a lot of pre-planning because there's so many little elements and little things and pieces and and all these pieces are all coming from different humans. So it's like, the network of supply and getting things regularly, that has to get worked out in order for the item to be consistent anyway.
Right. No, that's common sense stuff too. It's like you really have to make sure, yes, you may have an idea in your head, but what if you can't get that product?
Exactly. And that's very real today is what if you can't get it, or what if it stops coming, or what if what shows up next week sucks? Like, they're good now, but they've been bad so many times before. And do I really want to fall down the rabbit hole of developing an entire dish based on these things that sometimes are awesome and sometimes not so awesome?
Right.
I
would imagine you guys have to have a lot of like backup plans for these types of situations in case something does come in that's not up to your standards.
Yes. Always. There's always proteins to replace proteins or a veg replacement for a protein or something like that. They're always lining up, off ramps, options.
What we're getting kind of close to the end here, but I wanted to ask a couple more questions. Number one, I wanted to point out, first of all, I was amazed by this. I read your interview with Michael Muser from back in, a few years ago. And I had no idea your dad was a baseball player and that he actually played on the White Sox.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
I know.
But you're not much of a baseball fan, huh?
I'm not. I mean, not really. I've come to a place, I think, as an adult, that I can look back on my childhood, and if you're a baseball fan, I had the childhood you wish you had.
Right. Right.
I mean, no questions asked, brother. I was in the locker room as a kid
Yeah.
my whole childhood. So much so that it just wasn't fun for me to be around that,
Hmm.
that I would rather drive around the electric carts in the basement of Old County Stadium. They had, they had all the groundskeepers had those electric carts they would
Yeah.
drive. That was cool for me, was being able to unplug those when nobody was looking, and then we'd do donuts in the basement, make jumps and stuff, and jump golf carts. It was more like I was more in that arena. But
Yeah.
yeah, my dad played first base for the White Sox in '74, and then later in his career came back and coached third base and was the hitting instructor for the Chicago Cubs.
Okay. I did that part
So
I didn't know about.
yeah, he worked for both squads, so I can't get in trouble from anybody, South Side or North Side. But yeah, man, it was like I said, I had a life of I was raised in that world. It's a
Yeah.
crazy world. I mean, baseball season's so insanely long. I mean,
Yeah.
talk about lifestyle change, or talk about sacrifice for your craft.
Yeah.
Work in professional baseball, and be gone from your family for 6, 7, 8, 9 months a year
Yeah.
sometimes. I mean, my dad was gone all the time.
Yeah.
It's and then in the summertime, the second we got out of school, we get in the car and we'd drive out to wherever he was,
Right.
and then we'd live in some apartment,
Yeah.
attached to some baseball team. And once I became of age, like middle schoolish or whatever, my dad was transitioning from playing to coaching and managing. And
Right.
it's not like you just go from playing to like the majors.
No.
You have to coach through the farm league system.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of my baseball life was lived in, like, my dad was the manager of the El Paso Diablos. Okay. And I mean, like, I'll never forget it. They had a Tony Lama boot sign in the outfield, and anytime a player hit a home run and hit
It's
that sign with the ball, they got a free pair of boots.
just like Bull Durham.
It is
When you
unbelievable.
hit the bull.
They had my dad would fight so much with the umpires and get kicked out of so many games. They had a huge section of fans. They called them the Muser Fanny Club. And they had all these things they would wave around. All the security guys were like ex-cons for
Yeah.
real. Like, they were all yeah, and yeah, it was just it was a wild upbringing, man. I'm telling you, I think back on it, it's just hysterical the way I raised my daughter today and the world she grows up in.
Oh no, I remember the way I grew up, and it wasn't anything, quite as cool, but just the way things were done back then in the freewheeling 70s and 80s. It's like I think people would, nowadays would be like, just frightened by the concept.
Yeah,
It was almost like the Wild West.
yeah, yeah. They had it at that ballpark. I'm not kidding you. The groundskeeper and the guy that took care of the whole thing, and mowed all the lawns and stuff. His name, everyone called him Flat Top because he had an extreme flat top haircut, right? So everybody just called this guy
Old school
Flat Top.
military.
And he lived in a small house underneath the bleachers with his family.
Uh-huh.
And my parents would let me sleep over there all the time because me and his kids got along like bread and butter, man.
Yeah.
So I was like, but just as an adult, I'm like, you guys left me under the bleachers. You let me sleep over.
Oh,
This
yeah.
dude lived in a baseball park. I mean, but that was then, it was just nobody stressed about that kind of stuff, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it was a weird time. It was so different from how like my mother grew up. She grew up the old kind of 50s, early 60s way, that, you know, genteel area. Nothing happened. And I grew up in a house where like people were passing around trays with, coke and marijuana and everything. And it was like,
Right.
I mean, I might as well have been part of a biker gang. It seems like, looking back at some point.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
just it was so completely different. You know, that I mean, I'm not saying that people don't experience maybe that level, but nowadays it's not cool to, to
Correct.
to be that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm always trying to imagine a world in which I'd leave my daughter underneath the bleachers for an overnight with
Right.
flat top and his
Oh yeah,
crew.
nowadays, yeah, no, you got a complete handle on where she is at all time.
Exactly.
Well, Michael, I think that's a good positive place to end. I really thank you for taking the time today. It was great to finally get to chat with you. I don't know if you know this, but I'm just such a huge fan of what you guys do. I Even though I never ate at Grace and I haven't been there ever yet. I have this thing in me where you guys personify the right way to do things in terms of fine dining. I've heard some other horror stories about other people and stuff, and I've never heard anyone say anything negative about you guys.
Well,
So
that's a huge compliment. Because I know a lot of people that would say a ton about me, but no joking around. But because it's a tough business.
yeah,
It's a tough business. It's tough. But I appreciate you hearing that because we try.
yeah,
You know, we try really hard to do it the right way. We
yeah,
try really, really, really hard. We screw up all the time,
yeah,
and we struggle every day. Like, I don't want to make it sound like it's anything other than what it really is. I mean, after I'm done with you, we're gonna have 3 hours of meetings of like just people on people, just let's work this, that, move
right,
here, schedule this. This person's burning out. This person's undervalued. This person, you know what I mean?
yeah,
That's the that's the daily grind. I always say, if you go to a restaurant and you have this amazing experience and everybody's awesome and the waiter's great and the food tastes good and all that stuff, that's because all the people in there are digging whatever it is whatever's going on there.
right,
Everyone in there's pumped. They work there. They like it. They like their bosses. It's a
yeah,
good environment. They like the concept. They like the mission statement. They can stand behind it or with it. And they give good service as a result. Healthy
yeah,
restaurants do that,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
but restaurants get sick all the time because they go through phases
yeah,
where they're just not the chef's just not happy this month or whatever.
right,
It's not always a chef. Sometimes it's just in the systems of the restaurant. It's got to work it out, right? A lot
yeah,
of restaurants go through that. So
yeah.
it's kind of like that. But I appreciate you. I appreciate the compliment.
No,
We're
no,
trying really hard, man. It's not for
you're
not not
yeah,
for
you're
lack of
welcome.
effort.
Yeah, no, and I'm always amazed at Curtis because it's but you're a bit like that too, but Curtis is such a focused, driven person. And I think you've commented on this based on, and I've seen the documentary about Grace, to come out of what he came out of. And I had a somewhat similar background. And I think that's why I think about Curtis a lot, is that he took the road I wish I had, you know, whereas like I'm still like I started therapy again, recently because of all the shit that I, saw and had happened to me as a kid and all this stuff. But to see him go through something similar and to come out with that kind of precision and that kind of focus is just, it's like the road I could have probably chosen had I, had a different mindset, perhaps.
Right.
I don't know. It's a bit complicated to explain in a simple way, but I just have such admiration for him because of that,
Oh,
you
that's
know,
great.
that I think is just amazing. And I wish I had a tenth of that, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think I told that to him once too. I was like, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how, people, do that stuff, but we all have our past to go on, and, not everyone's is the same. So,
Right. Yeah, I think, chef is a great example of kind of, going full circle what we were talking about in the beginning, which is how hard the business is and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But and then I go off on tangents all the time. On the opposite side of how hard it is how rewarding it is, and how it's a
Right.
great place to live your life, and a wonderful, and you can have a career here. You can support your family in the restaurant business. You can,
Yeah.
and Curtis's story for me is a lot like that. Just as you were saying, he could have gone a lot of different directions with the trauma or the kind of home life that he was living at that time. And sometimes the way I see it is he got caught by the restaurant business. A kitchen caught him,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and just said, "Look, man, fuck all that other stuff. Dice this watermelon up,
Right. Right.
turn it into a flamingo." Because I mean, at that point he was working at a golf course, right? So they were doing
Right.
like fruit sculptures and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But it gave him what the restaurant gives everybody, are these little Scooby snacks, just these little reward mechanisms.
Yeah.
It's a place where you get to work on something and produce a thing and then hand it to somebody and then they eat it, or they, you know what I mean? They
Yeah.
react to it, and then you get to do it again and again and again. It caught him, and and I think in a lot of ways saved him.
Yeah.
You know, I think he's for sure lucky to have had those kitchens at that time to give him a place to go.
Right.
So yeah, but that's great though that you see that in him, because you're 100% correct. I mean, he's
Yeah.
you know
Yeah, and
it,
I think about the fact that I jumped into a bakery job and it did probably had the opposite effect on me that working at a restaurant had for Curtis. It probably just it was just a reminder of everything I didn't want to do. But I still took away from that this admiration for people that have the strength and the ability to to shut everything out and just zero in on precision and creativity and being 100%.
yeah, yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Well, Michael, again, thank you for taking the time. I'll, put it out in the grapevine when this gets out. And best of luck with everything as always.
I appreciate you, bud. Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for your time.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
All right. Bye.
Bye bye.